Hello once again from the Prim Reaper. So I know it's been a little bit of a while since the last one of these, so I apologize for the flow having fallen out of whack somewhat. However, with the focus on the last video in this series being about how some people will prop up their own weakness as strengths, I thought it might be fitting to sort of go in the opposite direction. How many aspects of social justice will take some people's strengths and turn them into weaknesses. More specifically, I'm talking about a pattern I have seen in the social justice world where there is a taking and taking almost to the point of exploitation from those individuals who demonstrate a strong sense of altruism towards others. So this video is very closely related to a sister concept I'll be covering in the next video in this series, Guilt as a Weapon, and I don't want to cross the streams too much by including the content I have in mind for that video with this one. But I did want to explore a little of what I feel is one of the more tragic elements of the insidious aspects of social justice, which is how it can twist this very positive and giving element of human nature into a potent mental struggle. Since it's been a while, let me go back over the original site I used to reference social justice principles and pick out a few choice sections. When a society is just, it protects and respects everyone's human rights. Being able to access essentials like shelter, food, and education is crucial for a just society. If access is restricted based on factors like gender, race, or class, it leads to suffering for individuals, communities, and society as a whole. Even when society tries to address problems, solutions won't work if those most affected can't participate in the process. Participation must be encouraged and rewarded so that everyone, especially those who haven't had a chance before, can speak. As is probably obvious, these things are all sentiments born out of wanting to help others and alleviate suffering. While there are many aspects of social justice that are retributive or even controlling in nature, I think many aspects that really draw people into the ideology are the elements that make people feel like they can make a positive difference in the lives of others. And for people who are just focused on the I want to help others aspect, they're not going to be on the lookout for any ways this mentality can become twisted, manipulative, or exploitative. If you want to find a good cluster of examples of what I'm talking about, you can look up the phrase, how to be a good ally, and see the kinds of responses you get. I'm going to go over some points in this article to show you what I mean. I don't mean to choose the low-hanging fruit by choosing a BuzzFeed article. Rather, I think that BuzzFeed is often simplistic and mainstream enough to try to appeal to a wider audience than a lot of other sites, so I think it's actually a decent example of the manipulative behavior I'm trying to highlight. I'm not going to tear down the whole thing. Some points would actually fit better in the next video, but I think there's enough here to illustrate my point. In order to collapse oppressive systems in the US, it takes more than just the people who are most affected by social injustices to care. It takes more than one donation or a single day of protesting to make change happen. So Tuesday has passed and we're still black, so to everyone who wanted to play ally yesterday, I hope you keep the same energy for yourselves, your peers, your employers, and your families, because our oppression isn't a trend. This is a day-to-day reality. Understand that. The first thing I want to make a note of here is that there is rarely, if ever, any sense of gratitude for the things that people do to try to support these marginalized groups. I doubt very much that the people performing support are looking for any gratitude, but when you try to engage in social justice causes like marching in protests or donating money to various causes, only to hear comments about how you're never doing enough or how you should be doing more, it can be pretty demoralizing. This can be exacerbated, especially when you have these wide, overarching problems that represent some historical moral failing that is far bigger than what any one individual can solve alone. The people I'm talking about in this scenario will often feel an intense guilt or personal shame that they can't do enough to solve the problem, even though that was never a realistic expectation in the first place. This is bad enough when you're looking at a legitimate cause stemming from a legitimate issue in our history, but it's even worse when you have cases where the cause is, generously, a little less legitimate. I'm looking at you, wealthy university students claiming to be oppressed. Where good-hearted people will often still try to bend over backwards to give of themselves to make it easier for those who claim to be underprivileged. Of course, anyone who dares to question that narrative is branded all kinds of nasty names, but that's a topic for the next video. Let's jump ahead a little bit. Are you ready to fully listen? The key is to listen to how people are feeling and what they need from you, instead of prescribing your own authority on situations that further elevate your importance. If you're elevating your importance, you're also perpetuating social inequalities and taking away from the real issue at hand. I feel like there's a real sense of entitlement here. Think about it. Don't you dare bring any sort of personal experience or authority on a subject to try to help solve a problem. That's only making you seem more enlightened and important than others. All we want from you is your unfettered attention. Many people I know who are into social justice causes have worked hard to develop themselves in ways that may be helpful to others. This kind of insistence that bringing anything to the table other than one's open ears is making the conversation about them not only reeks of insecurity, but it can be confusing to people who are coming to an issue wanting to help and provide actual legitimate solutions. It's reminiscent of that one comic that reads, "I don't want a solution, I want to be mad." Another post on this page jumps right to the more obvious elements of exploitation. Have you donated to social justice organizations? Every donation counts, but committing yourself to financially supporting social justice organizations on a regular basis is vital. Here's a list of resources to get you started. Other ways to financially support include buying products or shopping at stores owned by marginalized groups, volunteering your time, and even streaming videos, for free, that allot their ad revenue to social justice organizations. It's kind of sad if you think about it. We don't want you to bring any of your fancy expertise to try to solve our problems in any way, but we will gladly take your money from you, and preferably on a regular basis. I'm not trying to be obtuse here. I know not all people will say things like that, and that many folks will appreciate people trying to help in whatever way they can. But it is far too common to see these themes of, we don't want to hear from you, we want you to prop us up in whatever way you can because it's our voices that matter right now, not yours. This is not the mark of a collaborative group that is trying to solve problems. This is the mark of a group that is vengeful and narcissistic and will gladly take what they can get from people who are willing to give to what they feel is a good cause. And they will usually take without showing 1 ounce of appreciation. On the contrary, they will often act as though they are entitled to it, or that people aren't showing real support for their cause unless they're willing to pay up. Do you understand that you'll never know how it feels to be the oppressed group you are supporting? Now, I don't know about you guys, but I personally think this is one of the most manipulative points on this entire list for several reasons. First of all, it makes some pretty big assumptions about the feelings of the oppressed group to begin with. Like, do they all feel the same as each other? Do people belonging to the same group all have the same shared experience that they inherently understand? I'm going to go ahead and press X to doubt that one. It wasn't true with feminism and women's supposed shared experiences of oppression, and it's not true here. There are many people who belong to so-called oppressed groups that speak out against things going on in the social justice movement. But even 2 people who support the movement will likely have varying experiences towards a given situation, which will, in turn, be influenced further by how the people around them experience and react to it. Second, I have always been bothered by this attitude of, you'll never understand what I am going through. This is not by any means the first time I've encountered it. Hell, many of us have even said similar naive things to our parents when we were young. While sure, none of us will experience a situation in the literal exact same way as another person, many if not most of us can at least have an understanding of what things might be like in that person's shoes. This is especially so if said person is willing to tell us about it, rather than giving us a snarky line about how we'll just never understand. Realistically, I think many people are more similar than we are different. Barring certain conditions, we all have a general range of emotions that we recognize and experience, and while we may not experience them in the same way, we can generally imagine and understand what it must be like. It's not like these people are aliens experiencing alien emotions that we mere humans can never hope to comprehend. Which kind of leads me to the next point. This is the whole reason why my field is able to exist in the first place. If I, as a counselor, least of all as a counselor interested in helping men, could not help people without being exactly like them, I would not be able to function properly in the field. No one would. This is something that confuses me a great deal, actually. They go out of their way to teach us in university to be open to and to try to understand different ways of thinking and being in the world. Whether this be through different political perspectives, different cultures, or whatever else, without being able to control and put aside our own personal beliefs and biases to help the person sitting in the room with us, we would have to limit our practices to an unrealistically narrow subset of people, which would make it nearly impossible for people to be able to locate services for themselves. But to return it back to the altruism piece, I have talked to people, really genuine and caring people, who fall over themselves to want to dedicate themselves to a social justice cause, but who agonize and paralyze themselves with fear over the potential of not fully being able to help the people they want to support because they have never personally been through what they have been through. It's heartbreaking to see the level of anxiety they experience over messages like this. I have to tell them, you don't have to experience the exact same things as someone to be able to understand them and care for them. The fact that you care alone is already a major step. But it's awfully hard to convince them of things like that when people like this continue to peddle these inaccurate and unrealistic statements. Talk about pushing away people who want to help. I'll leave the rest of this article for now, but there are a few other side thoughts I wanted to get through before I wrap this video up. First, I just wanted to mention that of course I am aware that there are many people who will donate and dedicate themselves to causes like this, not because of true altruism, but because they think it will make them look good. But I have seen many people like those I just mentioned who legitimately just have these huge hearts and who believe they see people who are hurting and want to be able to make it better for them. And to see the way many people in these social justice movements treat them in return just burns my ass. However, I think that altruistic motive in general is a contributing factor to why so many people respond so negatively whenever anyone speaks out against the idea of social justice. There may be the perception that those who are challenging it don't care about making things better for those in a marginalized position. They may perceive people as being more concerned with maintaining the status quo or being too reluctant to give up one's own privilege, as opposed to wanting to point out flaws in logic or problems that may be causing more harm than good. There's a strong emotional component to all of this, I think. If people who are focused on the desire to want to help others perceive other people as being disinterested or even too selfish to want to do the same, they may respond quite negatively. In this way, altruism can even be weaponized against others. If other people are not putting in the same amount of effort as you are to solve the problem, then you can have a sense of moral superiority over them. You can start to feel justified in criticizing them for not doing enough and making demands that they be willing to make X, Y, and Z changes in their lives. And you can begin to believe that they are an awful person for not doing those things you're demanding. There are many people in this world who are very self-centered and focus on only them or those closest to them. I'm not by any means saying that this is an invalid way to live. I merely bring it up to contrast with the kinds of attitudes I've been talking about in this video. Now, the people who are truly selfish and will serve themselves at the cost of the welfare of others, those folks I absolutely take exception to, but I digress. However, I also bring it up to state that these people who are primarily focused on their own inner world in this way will be much less likely to fall prey to the kinds of manipulative tactics that I've talked about in this video. Unfortunately, the people who will be most impacted by this insidious aspect of social justice are those who are the most selfless, the most kind, the most giving of spirit, and they will often give of themselves until they are a quivering mass of self-doubt, wondering why they keep running into a lack of appreciation for everything that they do for others, or why they can never seem to do enough, or lament that they can never fully understand the situation of those oppressed groups, which will only spurn them to do more and more. It's a shame, and I personally think it's abusive. But that's all I have to say on the matter for now. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.